managed to join us. Just having a quick look, so Africa's had some interesting and positive things happening over the past few years. First of all, if I may pick on Rwanda, 5 years ago, nobody would have thought of Rwanda as a conference destination, let alone an incentive destination. Now, 5 years down the line, that has all changed completely. And Rwanda, by statistics, is number 3 in Africa, with Kenya and Uganda both ranking 5 and 6 respectively. So that is absolutely amazing stats. And by all indications, those destinations have risen above many historical challenges and have become a force to reckon with. So to that end, I would like to again congratulate the East African Travel Platform, which was formed very recently, and very happy to have both Emmanuel and Eve from the East Africa platform. So I think, Emmanuel, may I please first switch to you, if you would kindly tell us what the EATP is about, what your objectives and your KPIs are, and introduce yourselves to the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tiz. I hope you can hear me.
Thanks, we can hear you.
Yeah, I will probably come in second. Maybe to correct a bit, I'm from the Rwanda Development Board, which is a government institution in charge of tourism, of course. And we work very closely with the private sector, which now goes to the EATP. And I think since Eve is on call, I would rather prefer that he answers that question, because Eve sits on the EATP, the private sector. So I think he can speak better in terms of their KPIs, what they are about, and their participants. If you allow, we can let Eve please jump in first, then I will come in. Yeah, thank you so much.
Of course, thank you. Thanks, Emmanuel. Eve, thank you so much for being able to join us at very short notice today. And Eve is the technical advisor for the East Africa Tourism Platform. Eve, may we hand over to you? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. I'm glad really to join all of you on this important webinar. As Emmanuel was introducing, really the East African Tourism Platform is not really new. It has been in place since 2012, and it was recently reactivated after a few years of not being really active, but it has been there for a number of years, and it has done a few number of initiatives which saw the region really improving in terms of tourism. So the East Africa Tourism Platform is an apex private sector body for tourism in East Africa. And this is there to ensure that we have a focused and active approach in the East Africa private sector perspective into the development process of tourism in the region. So that is the platform. We have members. Our members are really the national apex bodies. These are the Rwanda Chamber of Tourism for tourism in Rwanda, the Uganda Association of Tourism, the Kenya Tourism Federation, and the Confederation of Tourism in Tanzania. So all of these make up the East Africa Tourism Platform. So it's a very important platform, and that looks at the regional matters on a private sector perspective. So we do this into promoting intra and interregional tourism through various activities, advocacy, where we see advocacy is needed, especially right now with the reopening of tourism. There's a number of issues that we are putting on the table to discuss with the EAC and the government to see that really tourism recovers. And we do this as well through marketing the EAC as one single destination. And as well, we have some other activities related to capacity building of the different federations that are in the East Africa. So that is, in a nutshell, what we do as the East Africa Tourism Platform. We are currently hosted under the Rwanda Chamber of Tourism, and the Secretariat of the East Africa Tourism Platforms shifts between the member federations in the EAC. So that is mainly what we do, and probably we'll speak more after maybe Emmanuel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eve, for that introduction, and amazing work that is being done, and I think very relevant to our current discussion. So, Emmanuel, if we may go back to you, just touching on the geopolitical climate at the moment. One thing that I know that has worked very successfully between Rwanda, Kenya, and Uganda is a uni-visa. Can you give us a little bit of background on when that came into operation and what has made it so successful?
Thank you so much, Sis. Yes, the uni visa, which I think we called it a single tourist visa, is a visa that came into some years back. I think around some 6 years back. And the visa, as you said, brings in together the country of Uganda, Republic of Kenya, and Rwanda in what you have termed as the Northern Corridor, a corridor that obviously joins those three countries. So the single tourist visa is all about a tourist getting a single visa that can make him travel in all the three countries. And we have done that to ease or to promote the sort of interregional tourism, or to ensure that the three countries are sort of put together as a package by tour operators. The tour operators can be able to package the entire three countries, so that the tourist doesn't need to seek visa in each and single country. Rather, he gets one single visa and he can take his travel around all the countries. So I think it has proved to be very impactful, for sure, from the people who are selling the destination. Although I don't have the numbers, but it has been proved to be very impactful, bringing numbers in. You see many people who do maybe know before, Kenya, for instance, for safaris, but once they package it together, now they learn about mountain gorillas, or maybe they know before mountain gorillas. Now you put together, you bring the safaris from Kenya. So tourists have learned to know different attractions within the three countries, and they have, took opportunity to visit those countries at lesser visa cost, or even visa restrictions in terms of application and so on. Yeah, so maybe that's what I can say in terms of that single tourist visa. You could probably have to follow up with more questions, but I think the bigger picture is to look into beyond that, probably more of East African region or even beyond. But at the moment, the three countries are still the ones exercising the single tourist visa.
Right. So it's my understanding that the single tourist visa is currently operational under the COVID-19 circumstances. Is that correct?
Well, yes, correct. Of course, there are some protocols around that, could, a country to another partner state could put different protocols. I think the purpose of this conversation today is more of having how we can harmonize the protocols. The visa itself is operational, but of course, COVID protocols might interfere in between, depending on how one country is, treating COVID in terms of receiving the incoming or outgoing passengers. But otherwise, as a principle, the visa still holds and it is operational.
Okay, that's good to know. Just one more question. As far as residents from the three countries go, do they need a single tourist visa, or can they just pass the borders with an ID document?
Come again, the citizens?
Citizens between Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda.
Oh, yeah.
Do they need visas, or how does it work?
For the same concept, I think also motivated, encouraged the inter-travel between the citizens. So you can cross to Kenya with your national ID to Uganda and to Rwanda. The passports, it's just a luxury for a citizen. Otherwise, for us, the three countries, the ID is very enough for you to cross the three countries.
Right.
A number of months within.
And final question before I move back to Eve. Are the COVID-19 protocols applicable to the residents who travel with IDs in terms of the
Yes,
testing, etc.
yes, correct. I mean, COVID-19 protocols, obviously, I mean, the pandemic doesn't look at the citizenship, so it's more of, a human transmission. So the protocols are more or less the same to either international coming or citizens. But as I said again, I think countries have got a little bit of, more or less the same, but some differences in terms of how they're implementing the protocols. From our side as the government, recently we've had also a similar platform like this one for the 6 partner states of the East African community to see how we can harmonize the protocols so that it becomes easier for people to cross, over the 6 countries. I mean, we're six countries. If you're not aware, South Sudan is also part of the East African community. So to answer yes, the protocols are the same to citizens and internationals. It's somehow unfortunate, but again, the pandemic is a pandemic. So we have to control it in a manner that allows the safety to our citizens.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. Now, before we move on, I would like to ask Casey to bring up a poll, which we'd like all our viewers to have a quick answer to. And then we are going to bring up a slide just with a snapshot of the protocols between Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda, what those protocols are, and then I'd like to then revert back to Eve afterwards to explore what are the opportunities to work towards harmonizing those protocols, what it will take, and what the potential benefits would be. And we are still voting. Let's give them another 30 seconds. I think it's a pretty clear, unanimous 100%. So while we do that, oh, there's one that says no. Right, thanks. Casey, I think we can stop and post the results. I am just quickly going to bring up that screen. I hope everybody can see it. This is a courtesy from our friends at Guildedge Travel who sent this out last week. And everybody can see that. So in a nutshell, let's look at Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda, which are the countries present in our conversation today. So open to citizens and residents, as Emmanuel just confirmed. Kenya, yes, with restrictions. Rwanda, yes. Tanzania, Uganda, yes, with restrictions. We look at what those restrictions are. Open to foreign nationals. Kenya, yes, with restrictions. Rwanda, yes. Uganda, not yet. Then quarantine in Kenya, limited. Rwanda, yes. We'll go into detail on that right now. Tanzania, no. Uganda, yes. And then as far as tourists go, I need to move my pictures. So yes with restrictions, yes with restrictions, and for Uganda, no. So I think that already gives us a picture where there's a uni visa and open travel between residents, and the protocol's quite different. I hope everybody can read that. So Eve, may I hand over to you? If we look at this snapshot, the protocols aren't radically different, but is there an opportunity to sit around a virtual table with policymakers and the right bodies to discuss aligning those protocols, which will hopefully make it easier for people to make that travel decision and then encourage travel? May I hand over to you for your thoughts on that, please?
Thank you, Tess. Really, this is a very opportune time to discuss this matter. In fact, as the East Africa Tourism Platform, harmonization of this reopening protocol is very, very crucial for us. It is one of the issues that we are advocating for with the different stakeholders that we have, being the national government, but as well as the East Africa and Community Secretariat. As you may see, of course, health is very critical as well for the different countries. But in a perspective of tourism, there is still a lot of impediment which should be addressed. For example, if you are, for a tourist, being a business tourist or a leisure tourist, coming from Kenya to Rwanda or another country, to come to Rwanda or to go to Uganda or another country, they'll have to get a test, get tested before even they depart from their original country. Depending on the country, at their arrival, they also get another test. After getting the test, sometimes they go into quarantine over 24 hours. And then also in some instances, they'll have to get another test before visiting a national park, which makes them 3 tests. At the departure, they get a 4th test, which makes them very, very inconvenient for the tourist, the person who's visiting. So we really would like to have this testing requirements harmonized between the countries, so that someone, if someone is traveling, for example, from Uganda, their test is valid in Burundi. Equally, when someone is traveling from Kenya, their test is valid in Rwanda and vice versa. So that is the first thing that we are looking at, as well as the testing fees. They're also different. You'll find in one country, the testing fee is $100. In another, it is $50, and also differing on the timing when one gets the results. Some countries, one can get the results in 24 hours, others in 48 hours. So all of that, so meaning before departure, before someone travels already, there's a lot of requirements, which we think they can be harmonized to have something which is harmonized. Some countries, for example, Rwanda, as you may see on the screen, they're requesting for 120 hours. That is 5 days prior to departure to conduct the test and to submit it via the passenger locator form. In Kenya, it is different. I think it is 96 hours. It is 96 hours. In Uganda, 72 hours. Burundi is still reopening their international airport. I think they are opening on 8th of November, but also their requirement will be 72 hours prior to departure. So all of this, we need to sit together at a table to see how do we harmonize these requirements, because again, it makes it very, very difficult for someone who wants to do intra-regional travel. As much as we are promoting, we are having discounted packages into the region, but if we don't solve these requirement issues, the quarantine time, the fees, it's going to be very difficult for us to enjoy our destination as a single destination. So this is one thing that we think that should be looked at very carefully, and then discussed among all the stakeholders. And we're already doing this. As Mr. Emmanuel said, there have been meetings with the East Africa Community Secretariat with the different stakeholders to really see how do we really harmonize these reopening guidelines and standards. This is something that is very, very crucial to ensure that at least one can travel without a lot of hassle, as these requirements. To get tested 5 times or 4 times to visit a destination is really tough.
Absolutely. Eve, thank you for that. And I think we can all agree that these are exactly the reasons why people aren't flocking to the various destinations, because having to have 4 tests in 4 days, doing an up and down business trip, apart from the cost, it's really super inconvenient. And it would be extremely helpful to figure out how to minimize all those tests between the destinations. And the one thing that I think we've all found very encouraging with Africa from the advent of the COVID pandemic is that apart from South Africa, the rate of infections have been relatively low, which really opens the opportunity to encourage and promote travel within Africa. So good inter-Africa travel. We just need the enablers, and I believe that alignment of the protocols is a great opportunity. There are many other factors that we have to consider, such as aviation, airlift. A lot of things have changed in the face of COVID, so we need to look at opportunities there. But I think the great opportunity here is for those 3 countries with the single tourist visa. If they can harmonize protocols in the near future, chances are other countries may follow suit. And I think in terms of the low-hanging fruit, let's look at Southern Africa. We're talking about the Botswana, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Namibia, Victoria Falls. What a perfect link between East Africa and Southern Africa. And it's very encouraging to see that some of our African airlines are already servicing those routes without having to travel via South Africa, which is very restrictive at the moment in terms of their red lists and policies, protocols as well. But I would like to go over to, first of all, Jeffers and then Muruyuki. Jeffers, let's speak to your industry first. What is your opinion? What impact would the harmonization of protocols have across Africa for the association business? What opportunities are there?
That's a good question, Tess. And harmonizing protocols basically takes us to what Africa has been dealing with over the last couple of years, and that is the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, trade area, which was ratified, which came into effect, I can say, last year in May. This is something which, as AFSI, we hold very dear, because we know that with the actualization of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, it's going to be easy for us to move around the continent without much challenges. I've had an experience of doing events in West Africa. And I'm sure some of our participants here are from West Africa, and they know the challenges that actually traveling even within West Africa means. Last year, I had a conference in Abuja, Nigeria. And what surprised me, in as much as I really know there have been challenges, what surprised me is that somebody flying from Benin, which is basically a country neighboring Nigeria to the west, actually probably has to travel to Addis Ababa from Cotonou and then fly back from Addis Ababa to Abuja. And you know what? The cost of that ticket alone is about $1,200. $1,200 is the cost of flying from South Africa, from Cape Town, Tess, where you are, to actually Toronto and back. For sure, we know that's true. So we continue facing such challenges because the African Continental Free Trade Area hasn't really been put into effect. And we know that if that is successful, we will have actually the world's largest free trade area. And at the same time, we are going to unite more than 1.3 billion people in Africa who can move freely. And that we know that it will actually generate $2.5 trillion economic block. And we know what are the objectives of the African Continental Free Trade Area. We know that. So sometimes as AFSAI, we issued a statement in 2018 to support the African Continental Free Trade Area. Now, we know that only 30 countries have ratified the agreement who are ready to actually open their borders for business to move around Africa in a more free way. Doing events and doing business in Africa involves movement is to move. You know, sometimes even the visa regimes around Africa is very, very, very discouraging. You know, don't be surprised that if you fly from, let's say, Botswana to let's say Senegal, you must have a visa to fly from Botswana to Senegal, other than actually flying to Senegal and getting a visa on arrival, or sitting behind your computer and doing an online application, make a payment and print your visa. You know, so we know that that is actually a challenge. But if this is harmonized, then I can tell you, for associations to continue doing business within Africa and making it easy for us to do business within Africa will be of help. AFSAI has noted that out of 54 African countries, only 30 have ratified. So we are also in the process, and sometimes this is basically like our advocacy. We are in the process of also coming up with another statement saying that any African country which is not a member, which hasn't ratified actually the African Free Trade Agreement, our members shouldn't do business in those countries. Because as an association, which is Africa-based, we also have a role to play in ensuring that moving within our continent is much easier. So to grow the intra-African trade through the better harmonization and the coordination of our activities needs Africa to open up. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeffers. Very, very good points there. And in fact, it reminds me of the saying, I think coined by Winston Churchill, is never waste a good crisis. And, you know, it seems to have been a bit of a hangover in Africa to start an initiative, but not follow it through. But now with this COVID situation, things are happening. There's an opportunity to make it happen. And I think fantastic that the EATP has researched and is really driving things forward. Fabulous that the Convention Bureau in Kenya is up and running and driving things. Now, Muriuki, going back to you, speaking of convention.
Just before you move to Muriuki, I just wanted to, you know, there is always something we talk a lot about this pandemic and the opportunities that it presents to all of us. And one of my friends once made a very interesting comment that it's actually like finding salvation in the devil. So we know COVID is the devil, but you can actually find salvation because there's a lot of opportunities which are within it.
Absolutely, and we need to grab them and you know, make the most of the opportunity. So Muriuki, talking about convention bureaus, recently the Coalition of African Convention Bureaus was brought together. Can you give us a little bit of an overview on that? And in the spirit of collaboration, where do you see the convention bureaus playing a role in driving intra-African travel?
Thank you, Tess, for that. What, in my opinion, where I see that particular coalition playing a critical role in increasing the economic benefits of mice in Africa is in terms of being able to galvanize and synergize our private sector to work closely and to partner together. In my opinion, that would involve a collaborative approach in terms of the education that the sector can have, so that there is a common level of skills, common level of understanding of how the sector works and how the continent can be able to deliver successful events in the future. And then out of that, saying that there's an opportunity for some of those, for example, association meetings that rotate within different destinations. So as an example, if an event happens in Ethiopia and the next time that event can come might not be in Ethiopia, then there's an opportunity for other destinations to be able to sit around a table and look at the learnings that were picked from that event being hosted, for example, in Ethiopia, and seeing how can another destination pick that up and use those learnings to be able to attract that meeting to come back into the continent in another country, for example. So, but for that to happen, there needs to be a scenario where the various destinations can openly speak, can openly share information and intelligence that would benefit the partner destinations in future. And that's where, from a convention bureau point of view, we've got an opportunity to actually start that conversation. And like all the panelists have been speaking in terms of what opportunities are there, I think beginning from the whole aspect of the health and safety protocols and then being harmonized, that can be the first step that the various destinations through their convention bureaus can take to start creating that narrative of a unified continent and region, a unified continent in terms of being able to deliver seamless experiences throughout the various destinations. So in terms of how I see that working in future, I think only time will tell, but it will require a lot of give and take from the various destinations, a lot of private sector involvement, and also the various governments need to be able to speak together so that some of these recommendations that will be made can be fast-tracked.
Fantastic, thanks, Maruyuki. I think that's always the challenge, isn't it? Is collaboration between governments. Everybody wants to be the first or wants to be in the lead. So this is a great time for everybody to sit around that virtual boardroom table, hopefully a real boardroom table in the near future, and set aside the differences and find out what we can do, not what we can't do. That would be a great conversation to have, and I'd love to be a fly on the wall in such a meeting. Emmanuel, may I bounce over to you? This is not strictly a tourism thing, but I think something that's not always front of mind, even for Africans, especially those who live in the cities, is the extent of cross-border informal trading. And I've seen this in various African countries, between Malawi and Mozambique. I think one of the biggest eye-openers for me was between Rwanda and the DRC, close to Lake Kivu. I mean, just the volumes of people who cross borders on a daily basis just to trade, buy the groceries, etc., etc. So I'd just like to hear your take on, we're talking about economical drivers. I mean, we're not even touching on the vast scopes of engineering and agriculture and mining and those, just cross-border trading. What impact, in your opinion, do you think would harmonization of policies have? Or shall I reverse the question? How badly do you think it affected the local economies when those borders were shut and people from one village to the next could not do their cross trading?
Thank you so much, Tiz. It's probably a very interesting question. and it may be not an easy question from my perspective, but I think to answer the question, the COVID pandemic or protocols obviously had a major negative impact on the economic activity of the people crossing the borders. That is obvious. If you look at maybe if I take case of maybe Rwanda to DRC as an example, just simple example. I think you see thousands of people crossing on a daily basis from the western borders to DRC. I mean, depending on different opportunities in each country, so you find all citizens crossing from each country to another. And actually, you find some are residing in another country and they have to go to work in another country and come back to another country. So it has impacted a lot. For sure, I couldn't tell the numbers, but we've seen, people crying. Although, I mean, the economic activity generally is down, business is down, but now the protocols as well, because we had our borders closed, people could not cross, and the entire life depends on the outside the border. They are crossing the border. So if you can't go there and you work, do your business, so it's very, very difficult, even if for items, the business, the commercial items that we probably get from other countries crossing to our countries or our countries crossing to other countries. So there was a very big negative impact on our community people. And I think recently that's when in terms of harmonizing, we started thinking about, and I think they have started, bringing down some of the restrictions, and people can easily cross under certain restrictions, but there is a little bit of a relief on that. I think I'm talking on the side of the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and in Rwanda. I'm not quite sure about Uganda, but I think the same is likely to happen. But maybe other panelists can come in to answer that for sure. If we could harmonize the protocols and we trust each other in terms of people crossing. So as Eve put it, if you can be sure that somebody from Rwanda is not bringing because they have got measures in place, and somebody from DRC or from Kenya, because they have measures, so it will ease the movement of people, and I think the economic activity will therefore flourish or probably recover if I put it.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Eve, would you like to take that conversation a little bit further? And I know it's not a formal tourism, but these are tourists that we don't really count. But these are people who depend on their daily lives, crossing borders on a daily basis, but also impact immensely on the economies. Where do you see that going?
All right. So you're very right. So these traders that are across the two cities, and you have these in several parts of the East Africa, not only between the city of Goma and the city of Rubavu in Rwanda, but there are also other cities that have this kind of trade. So I know that there are some efforts being done to see that at least for the traders, those who are attending school and some other for medical purposes can cross. But I think there's more to be done, because when you look at these people that are crossing, they also are tourists because they spend time in restaurants. When they cross borders, they go to various tourism activities. They spend into some of them. They stay over in hotels. So I really I concur that we should do more in terms of harmonizing really this cross-border trade and the policies for reopening. And the key is really to have a harmonized testing procedure so that a test that is done in one country is really trusted in the other country, so that we don't have to carry out another test when they cross over to the other side of the country. So yeah, I think that is something that we should continue working with the government to ensure that it is applicable, and advocacy will keep doing advocacy for this, for the different stakeholders to ensure there is smooth. Of course, with COVID, this is also a health matter that has to be looked at with the different health authorities.
Absolutely. Eve, thank you so much for that. And I think we are all really looking forward to the development of these discussions, and we're encouraging that they are actually already underway. We know all good things take time, but let's hope it happens sooner rather than later. And I think baby steps, if we can just have a small victory in terms of moving that forward, I'm pretty sure that other countries will follow by example. So, Molemwa, I'd just like to turn to you for a moment. Do we have any questions for any of our panelists at this stage?
Yes, Tess, we do. We have one from Chick Keita. I hope I pronounced that okay. This pandemic forces us to change and reinvent all of our strategies. Why the African countries introduce intra-Africa tourism? That's the first question. Can we create commercial hubs for purchases in African countries which have industries like South Africa going to buy abroad?
Molemwa, may I stop you? There's some background noise. Can we just ask for somebody to mute, please? Thank you. Molemwa, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, so the first question, who would we like to address that to?
I think the first question I would actually like for you to pick it, because maybe that would help. It's
Would you mind reading it again? Sorry, I struggled to hear you. Please just read it again.
Okay, so it says, this pandemic forces us to change and reinvent all our strategies. Why have we not developed intra-Africa tourism? That is the first part. The second part says, can we create commercial hubs for purchases in African countries which have industries like South Africa instead? So I'm assuming this is like, can we create commercial hubs for purchases in African countries like South Africa instead of going to buy abroad? So this is more the travel that we do externally rather than intra-continent. And then it also, the last part says, why not develop inter-country tourism like Japan is doing? We must rely on our ability to develop tourism and travel between Africans by setting up the African passport. This question comes from the Open Business Africa.
Okay, thank you. There are several facets there. I think, Eve, may I pass that one on to you, and if you would like to share it possibly with Emmanuel, if you're okay with that.
Yes, this.
Thank
right.
you.
So in regards to the intra-Africa tourism, so I'll talk of this region of the East Africa community region. There is already some progress into this. Of course, COVID, as one of the panelists said, has really compelled us to look again inside in the region more than we expect more from outside of the region. As you rightly said at the beginning of the discussion, that we are not looking, I mean, the traditional source markets are no longer, we cannot really depend on it as for now at least. So there are certain initiatives that are ongoing. There is an EAC, which is the East Africa and community marketing strategy, which is being developed and at the last phase of being validated. And this will mainly do is to promote the region as a single tourism destination, but as well, a big component of it is to look at regional tourism. How do we promote regional tourism? How do we encourage East Africans to travel in East Africa? And in line with that, we have been advocating for more incentives to travel in the region. That is in terms of harmonizing the pricing for East Africans, so that an East Africa which has been already approved, an East African traveling in East Africa should pay a local fees. For if you're a Kenyan traveling to Uganda, you should pay like a Ugandan in Uganda. So this is one of the aspects that will really help in terms of having affordable packages for regional people to travel in the region. As well, there are some issues that were raised earlier in terms of the cost of travel. This is also one of the issues that we have been looking at, because it's still expensive to travel in the region. It's still the cost, or the cost of air transport is still quite high. And this is something that we are also looking at with the different stakeholders to see how do we bring down the cost of travel? How do we reduce in terms of all the costs involved? Because the air transport cost involves a lot of fees that should be brought down to ensure that people can really travel much easier. So in line with that as well, we have online portal that we developed, Visit East Africa, that really is looking at really selling East Africa to the region and beyond. And this as well we think will facilitate as well people in the region who don't have information about how they can travel within the region, to get information easily and to be able to book their services, the entire itinerary using the portal. So there are some initiatives that which are ongoing. The issue of visa, as we said, has been really pretty much addressed, at least within the Uganda, Kenya, and Rwanda, in terms of facilitation of a visa. The people can travel using their IDs without necessarily using their passport, and no visa is required. And this also has facilitated really travel within the region. Same for the use of the single tourist destination visa, which tourists outside of the region can use to travel within East Africa. So these are some of the issues that were there that have been addressed to have more intra-regional tourism. Of course, with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, it gives us another opportunity to go beyond the regions and have the economic blocks as well work together to ensure that these challenges are addressed altogether.
Thank you, Yves. I hope that answers the question. It's very comprehensive, and certainly the way that we should be, the direction we should be moving towards. I'd also like to touch on the aviation side of things, and as Bulemwa and Casey and I agreed, aviation really should be a separate discussion, because there are many things to discuss. For instance, the single African air travel market. We've got, I think it's 34 countries that have signed up, 8 that have ratified, but nothing's been implemented yet. So I think we need to make a fire there somewhere to get that going. And in terms of that, we need our government to buy into the cost factor of things, because if you look at the breakdown of your airline ticket, the cost of your actual airfare is small, and then you've got your taxes, all your taxes on top. And I think in order to reignite aviation within our continent, airlines need to start collaborating, and then also our governments need to come to the party to make those tickets more affordable, because if the tickets are more affordable, we'll start moving more passengers, and travel means trade, means economic growth. So that's very simplified, of course. But on that note, Emmanuel, would you like to add anything that Eve has just shared with us? And after that, I think we'll move into parting shots from all our panelists.
Thank you so much, Tess. Yeah, I think Eve put it very comprehensively, but maybe I want to add that it's all about, well, to answer the other question that a colleague had asked. So it's all about, I think, mindset change. We really need to change our thinking, the way we do things. Because if you give an example again of East Africa, I see he had mentioned an African passport, for instance, and I think that idea had already been initiated by the African Union. But if you come down to the East African community, for example, we have already implemented a single, also an ESC passport. Like I already hold an ESC passport, East African passport, which again wants to promote that integration aspect. But being integration, but also economic-wise, I mean movement-wise, we also need to be able to integrate. Now, coming to the idea of the business, that we need to have commercial hubs that Africans can buy from. I think it's all about our mindset. Why do we go abroad? As he puts it, South Africa probably has got quite a lot of that they can offer in terms of not only tourism, but any other industries. So we always travel outside Africa to shop, to purchase things, and I think we really needed to trust. In Rwanda, we have what we call Made in Rwanda, a policy of which we encourage Rwandans to buy from the local produce, from Rwandan products. And I think we need to have that spirit of trying to instill in our people that surely our local made things can work. Even our tourism, intra-regional tourism, we can cross. And instead of going to, I don't know, to Dubai, to China, wherever you go, you can still get, quality things in Africa. I didn't capture well his question, but if that's the angle he was in, I think we need to really have our mindset changed in terms of our citizens, but also our leaders. We need to believe in what we do as countries of Africa. We believe in what we do. We put our hands together, and probably we can, as a continent, only as a regional bloc, compete other, outside world. I don't know if you understand what I mean. Instead of Rwanda itself, Kenya itself trying to compete with China, which is a continent by itself, or any other bigger country. So if we put our hands together, we are able to rather pull more incoming, get revenues from more of incoming people. If we fight together, we market together, whether it's tourism or not tourism, and we are able ourselves to appreciate what we do, maybe that could build the image of our African continent, our region as East Africa, and we can be able to compete. We get rather the outside world coming to look for our produce or our tourism or our product. Maybe that's what I can add. The single word in there, it's more of a mindset shift and thinking.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Personally, I totally agree with you. And I mean, from an economical point of view, a trade point of view, I'm going to use Kenya as an example. I know that Kenya is importing maize from Mexico. Why not from another African country? And this is where we need to bring a whole bunch of other people on into the conversation. Your farmers, your agricultural sector, your transport sector. And I think the transport sector and the challenges with importing and exporting within Africa, that's another whole discussion. And I think that is all part of the intra-Africa, the business travel development, which will then help drive all those other sectors. And let's start doing business with each other. So I'm going to leave that for another discussion. I think it'll be a a very interesting one, and we'll need a lot more time. Mulema, how are we doing for time? Do we have time for parting shots from all our panelists before we close?
Yes, we do, but I was just going to ask, as the Africa My Summit, we have 3 pillars that guide us. So we talk people, we talk sustainability, and we talk technology. Now, the reason why I want everybody to chime in with their closing remarks is I did not hear anything about what we're doing in terms of building our human capacity. Remember that there's been no disruption to our landscape. Our Table Mountain is still exactly the same. Our Victoria Falls is still exactly the same. The Kilimanjaro still stands. Now, what for me is a source of concern is that if we're going to recover and we leave the human factor out of the conversation, we are sitting in a situation where I know that we have professional certifications like those that are offered by SITE, but what are we actually doing at intracontinental level to make sure that we standardize the skills and knowledge that is required in our people to develop this tourism that we so desire? As the panelists come back with responses, I will give the closing remarks, but I would like them to basically touch on if there are any initiatives that have been started. And I hope SITE is taking advantage of the numbers of the countries, because we need to have people that actually know how to sell destinations for in the context of business tourism rather than the leisure side. So in closing, it would be nice to learn what interventions East Africa has in terms of developing capacity.
Right, if I may jump in first there, thank you for that, Mulemwa. Very happy to say that it took a while to get there, but I'm doing an in-depth workshop with the travel tourism trade sector from Rwanda. It was going to be in the next 2 weeks, but then last week Rwanda announced that they are bringing back their direct flights from Cape Town the first week of December. So we moved it to December. Unfortunately, it's a little bit late in the year, but I will be rolling those out into all the other countries. As soon as I've got the curriculum together, it is nearly there. I will share that with everybody on the panel and the other African countries, and see if we can actually roll that out as soon as possible. It is a masterclass, a 2-day masterclass with a lot of practical interactions, and it focuses on each destination. So each workshop and masterclass will be tailored to the destination. I hope that helps. In the meantime, I'll share more information within the next week as soon as it's all complete. And on that note, let's start with parting shots from Jeffer, then Muriuki, then Emmanuel, and finally Eve. Thank you.
Thanks, Tez, and once again, thanks for the opportunity. You know, Mlemo has asked a very important question, and I must say that associations normally are repositories of knowledge because we develop a lot of policy papers, but you know, the policy papers have to go to policymakers. And who are the policymakers? The policymakers more often are through legislation. That's through maybe our parliament, so that they can pass it into law, and then it can be used. But one thing I've learned over years is that, you know, policymakers normally do not even know what they're supposed to do unless they have somebody who is well aware of that particular topic to help them understand it before they can even push it forward. And otherwise, there's so little that we should expect from our policymakers, in as much as we can come up with the great policy papers. And this all, again, takes us to knowledge management. We know that for any industry to grow, there must be knowledge management, and especially associations. We have, most associations actually have knowledge management of what they have been doing over years and what they are still doing. Only that we need to have this knowledge management harmonized so that we can probably have competitive advantage, and also we can use that knowledge to come up with more greater innovations. At the same time, to provide better customer services, not only to our members but also to our industry. The knowledge management is very, very important. At the same time, knowledge management will help us to actually, it will help to facilitate organizational learning, and at the same time manage our intellectual capital. So it's important for every organization, and I'm talking about associations because I know people come to associations when they want specific work to be done, and they have seen it here in Kenya in a couple of governments. The government has set up some task forces, and what we see that those task forces actually are formed by mostly associations. The Ministry of Education formed a task force on the opening of schools. If you look at the members of that task force, they're from associations, all the association heads of different associations in the education industry. When we look at the Ministry of Tourism, when they came up, when they wanted to create protocols for reopening the tourism industry, they went to associations. Why? Because they know these are the groupings which have people who understand the industry and who have the knowledge and the ability to come up with what can work for the industry. Where we don't always go past is when it goes to we want it to become policy issues, goes to legislation, and sometimes we're let down because probably they don't know what they're doing because they don't have the knowledge. So we need to also be able to advocate and make sure that they understand and help us to actually come up with what can work for the industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffers. Thank you for that. Muriuki, over to you.
All right. Thank you very much again, Tess, and the team that has put this together for the opportunity. My parting shot would be just to recap in terms of how we started, Tess, in terms of how do we build confidence in our destinations from the point of our delegates and our stakeholders. I think if you look at what we've been discussing and just trying to find ways in which the various countries can collaborate. As a start, we need to be confident to be able to have these discussions as destinations and governments. And once you're able to demonstrate that confidence, then it's easy for that to be passed across to our private sector and ultimately the people we expect to come into our destinations to have those meetings and events. The thing also that we need to be cognizant of is the fact that the various countries will have different challenges and different agendas or things that are relevant to them. So in terms of the speed of how some of these joint protocols or agreements might not be that fast, but then we need to be able to identify those common areas where we all are in agreement, and I think fast track those so that we can slowly and gradually start preparing our industries for that point in time where the sector bounces back. What we can hope for is that science is able to give us a vaccine in good time so that there's additional confidence, even from where we sit as government, to encourage people to come into the country and hold meetings. So people have to go to a point where they are confident and they can confidently say, I can go to this place and I can safely go back home and I'll be fine. So it might be a slow process, but I think as governments, we need to work with our private sector to handhold them and just make sure that the necessary agendas, the necessary laws, the necessary protocols are in place so that they are confident enough to actually retain those businesses and keep their staff and look forward to a better, brighter future post this pandemic. Or so those would be my that would be my parting shot. And I think going forward, let's just pick one item that we can all agree on as the various destinations and push towards implementing it, and then the rest will slowly fall into place.
Good advice there. Thank you for sharing, Muriuki. Emmanuel, may we come to you for your final words? Thank you.
Yes, Tess, thank you so much. I think this was indeed a very great opportunity to speak to this panel, this platform, and indeed the harmonization of protocols is very, very key for our way forward as the destinations. Mulemwa talked about the 3 pillars. I think these are very, very important: people, sustainability, and technology. And I think, first of all, COVID-19 pandemic was probably an opportunity in terms of, technology, because even this that we are doing now already, everything is being done virtual due to the pandemic. So we needed to take advantage, opportunity of that, and see how we can capitalize on the pandemics in a bad thing, but still now technology comes in and helps. So now coming back to people, I think it was a moment whereby we should have had to bring knowledge to our people. So instead of people staying at home, without nothing to do, I'm sure if companies, organizations, private sector, even government would have taken this time, to train their people through, online trainings. Just a second. Sorry, I had a disturbance in my office. I'm working from the office. So I think it was an opportunity that we needed to be able to increase capacity of our people. I think they have enough time to free time. As in Rwanda, for instance, we've really engaged in a number of training activities. We've partnered with a number of development partners from various NGOs to train our people, especially in the industry. For instance, we've got in place a company that is going to train all our non-English speaking people working in the tourism industry. So they are trying to teach them English via online platforms. Obviously, there are some challenges with technology as well, because you need data, you need device and stuff. All those things are some of the challenges. But we've at least tried to have that so that we can capitalize on the negative side of COVID. We rather train our people since tourism, when tourism recovers, comes back, at least we have, a good, human resource that can deliver services. On the point of harmonization, we've been trying, and I think, again, the mindset, the leadership we've been trying to harmonize certain protocols as the East African community, member states. I remember we for instance, this thing of grading of hotels, we've been working on standardizing how we can have, quality assessment, grading assessment, so that if you said a 4-star hotel in Rwanda, the service is similar to Kenya, similar to Uganda, so that we are able to market the destination as one. Because you want the tourists, to appreciate the service across the countries as the same experience. Of course, it can differ in terms of maybe the human capital that is delivering the service, but at least the requirements, the minimum standards are harmonized. But you see, I think it's a conversation we need to take forward, because we never really get there. So we talk about it, we even sit and work on some things, but to get the actual, the proper action going sometimes becomes a problem. So maybe from there, again, we need the East African platform, the private sector, to come in. I think we need the private sector to come and push us. Well, I'm talking from the side of government. The private sector comes in, shows what they really want. I think, is it Muriuki who said that sometimes the policymakers do not even understand what they are making policies for. So rather, the people in the practice, the private sector, the EATP, I'm good that Eve is around and is standing for the 5 countries. They need to really push us to act. Whatever we talk, and then we put it to action. So I think I can close there to thank you for the opportunity. And we hope maybe, another colleague said, next time, yes, we can have one item, work on it, and maybe have more of people from the government side who can also speak on the behalf of their government, so that maybe our conversation can materialize into something that can be actionable by the private sector. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emmanuel. And indeed, there is the challenge. Let's hope that when we have our next conversation, we may have some policymakers on board and have some feedback on positive results of harmonizing those protocols. So finally, may we please go over to Yves and let him give us his closing remarks before we finish with Kezi's closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you all. This has been a great discussion, and I'm sure we've all had our takeaways. So for us, I think it is very, very important that there is harmonized reopening standards for this particular region, for the ESC. I know there are already some guidelines being worked on at the East Africa Tourism platform, and also together with the stakeholders, the ESC, and the individual countries. So we'll keep pushing for this to have harmonized standards, reopening standards. We also would like to see the tourism recovery plan for the region also finalized and also implemented, so that we have one blueprint for the region, how we are going to recover as a region, not individual countries, because already we know that individual countries have their strategies for recovery. As a bloc as well, we need this. We're also looking forward to have the East Africa marketing strategy in place, which will definitely give us a way to market during and post COVID, and this as a single tourism destination. In terms of capacity building, this is very, very key. The people factor is very important if we want to have the development really having a strong foundation. And on the side of the East Africa Tourism Platform, we are going to have a needs assessment and a skills gap to see really what are the gaps that right now we can address in terms of capacity for the member states in East Africa, and then we can develop around that a plan for capacity building together with the different stakeholders. We already have engaged the East African community, which is the more of the government side, to see how we can work together on this component of capacity building. And this is very, very important for us. Emmanuel spoke about the classification criteria that are in place now for the ESC. And this is a very good step that has been done to have harmonized classification criteria for accommodation establishments in the region. We are looking forward to continue working with them on this, and also where needed to update them to ensure that they always go with the current needs, and all the protocols. The new protocols are also adapted to the criteria. So with that, I think we've had a lot of a very good discussion today, and hopefully we can have another session where we discussed different topics that are really challenging this period for the harmonization of travel in Africa. Thank you.
Eve, thank you so much. And before I hand over to Casey, I would just like again to express my deep gratitude for all our panelists today for sharing your experience and your insights. I hope everybody's had some takeaway from this, be it positive or otherwise. I do know that all our panelists has given everybody something to think about. And thank you, Eve. I would really like to encourage having further discussions moving forward. We actually do have a committee that started these discussions, and during the course of this week, we'll share that with everybody. And in fact, Muriuki and Jeffers were both in some of those previous discussions, which we'll share with you shortly. On that note, thank you from me, and may I hand over to Casey for the closing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're still in Lusaka. It's been a great morning, gentlemen. We only realized now that this panel was very gender imbalanced, but the support was very much female. So we did not have any men in the back office. So we are still running the world, just so you know. Okay, it's been a pleasure to have you, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to have this discussion. For us, this is going to be a monthly activity until September. I will bring in Kezi. She has finally gotten over the little technical glitches that she was experiencing, but please be on the lookout. We have had a conversation on and about East Africa. We will be moving to another part of the continent in the next few months, but I will tell you, I will hand you over to Kezi, who is in Nairobi, to close us off as our host for the day. Thank you very much, and Kezi, welcome to the party.
Thank you, Mulemwa. Thank you. It's been very interesting just listening in to the conversation. Very interesting dialogue that I think is very timely. It is a dialogue that the continent needs to continue having. And I think what is really important for us is to fast track activity from dialogue to actual execution of some of the issues that we've had opportunity to dialogue around over the last several months since COVID hit the world. So my very deep gratitude to each of our panelists. You have very well articulated key issues and responded to key concerns that I think are of critical importance to both those of us in private sector and to policymakers. And I think generally there is a concern or a deep commitment from both ends to drive numbers and to drive cooperation towards recovery for the continent. So a little background on the Africa Mice Summit. This is a continental dialogue that was started back in 2018. It is a forum that we created back in 2018. It is a private sector-driven initiative, but that brings together stakeholders drawn from across board, across the continent. And the initiative was started basically to drive the development and the growth for the meetings, incentives, conferencing, and exhibitions industry, just out of a realization of how potent this particular industry is towards driving numbers, driving not just tourism for the continent, but I think generally business and trade. We know how significant the industry is towards driving trade and business. And I think as we all gear towards the active implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, it is important that we harness our different capabilities as a region and harness our different opportunities for growth and talk to actual implementation if we are serious. If we are serious about implementing the CFTA and its successful implementation, so that it's not just another document on the table. I know it has been said that as Africans, we have our great ideas, but I think we now need to be known for the implementation of the great ideas that we have. Africa indeed has an opportunity for growth in this season, and we need to leverage on it. The Africa Maize Summit did launch the Africa Maize Awards as an opportunity to make a contribution towards the human capital development on the continent. And we will be rolling out categories for that award in the next 1 month. Allow me to mention that out of the cooperation, the collaboration that we've seen through the Africa Maize Summit, which in fact has a secretariat in Nairobi and another secretariat in Lusaka. Out of these collaborative efforts, we've seen a lot of milestones achieved. A good example is just 2 months ago, having recognition and a creation for the first ever Africa Meetings Industry Day. Just an opportunity for the industry to get together on the continent and celebrate, and even introspect on the opportunities that the industry has to drive business and trade for the business, for the continent. So allow me to deeply thank each one of you. Hearty gratitude to you, Tess, for very well moderating this panel and being so articulate in bringing together our different panelists for today. We are deeply grateful to you, Jeffers, Miruka, for your continued support and participation in the different activities that we continue to host in the different platforms for dialogue. Thank you also to you, Emmanuel. We are grateful to have had the participation of the Rwanda Development Board. Excellent partners. We are grateful that you could come on board. Yes, Ngenzi, East Africa Travel Platform, thank you for stepping in even at the 11th hour. We are very grateful that you could come in. Of course, our local partners here in Nairobi, Muriuki Muriithi from the Kenya Convention Bureau, we are grateful that you could step in. Mine is to encourage us to continue opening spaces for dialogue, but also to continue looking for opportunities to implement. Even one idea well implemented is worth a great lot that remains on paper. So thank you to all our participants, all the different attendees to this event. I am certain that you will be hearing more from us, and we look forward to a continued collaboration. So from myself and from all the entire team in the Africa Maize Summit Secretariat, we want to say thank you and have a good day, wherever you've been joining us from. Asanteni sana. That's the way we say it in Nairobi. Maybe we can hear how we say it in Rwanda. Asante.
Murakoze.
Murakoze. How else do we say it? Ted, where you are?
In Afrikaans, we say buy a donkey. Not buy a donkey, buy a donkey.
Buy a donkey.
We have to be careful not to say donkey. Any other African dialect? I would love to hear any other African dialect that we have.
Merci beaucoup, but that's a French. Anyways.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. We look forward to continuing with this dialogue.
Much appreciated.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.